Hey everyone, it's been a while since I did a video. Seems to be the case between each set that I put out, just because, life gets busy, work, kids, everything that goes on. I'm sure many of the viewers out there understand. Thank you for your patience. Thank you to everybody who's provided feedback, clicked like, etc. I'm having a real fun time doing this. I just don't get around to it enough. This is one that I really wanted to do as a follow-up a couple of weeks ago. I did a best debut albums in rock and roll. I did a top 5. I've wanted to do the best second albums in rock and roll. Because there are some artists who either their first one maybe just wasn't that good, or in the case of a lot of these, the leap they took as far as songwriting, production, overall output was so great that from such a leap from the first one that the second really eclipsed it. I did Led Zeppelin 1. You could easily pick Zeppelin 2 as being in this list, but the template didn't change a whole lot. It's a great second record, but the thing is, the first one was so great, how do you pick? So that kind of thing, I ruled those sorts of albums out where the first one and the second one were both phenomenal. So I'm going to start here. Top 5, but I'm going to do a top 6. I'm going to do sort of an honorable mention, but it's really number 6. And you might think, oh, this should be higher, whatever. It's my list. I'll do what I want. One of the great trios in rock and roll. Their first album was good, but really they were kind of a Led Zeppelin ripoff band. They'd been plying their trade for a while up in York and Scarborough and all around the metropolitan Toronto area. You have to know who I'm talking about. It's Rush. Their first album, self-titled, has Working Man on it. It was really a good hard rock record, but it was nothing maybe spectacular. If they'd stayed on that template, who knows if who knows if we'd remember them as well as they do. Their first drummer, John Rutsey, left. Neil Peart came in. Their second record, I still have the wrapping on this because I have the vinyl. I've never actually listened to the CD. Fly By Night. Anthem, By Tor and the Snow Dog, Fly By Night, Rivendell, in the end, among others. This is really a classic record. The leap they took to becoming the prog rock legends started here. They still weren't selling a whole lot of albums, but with Neil doing the lyrics, he was such a brilliant poet. We're not going to sit. We could do a whole hour-long show on just Neil's lyrics and his drum work, and we would only begin to scratch the surface. So, Fly By Night, honorable mention / number 6. Again, they have so many great albums. This just was such a sonic leap from the first. So that's number 6. Number 5, gonna go with not really the originals, but the best well-known bad boys from Boston, Aerosmith, Get Your Wings. Now again, their first album had Dream On, which was a radio hit. I like it less over the years just because I've heard it a billion times. Moving Out was on that one, whatever. It was a good album, but Tyler's voice, he was so self-conscious, he sang really weird. It wasn't, I'm glad they kept at it. The songwriting took such a leap from the debut to this one. Same Old Song and Dance, Lord of the Thighs, Spaced, Woman of the World, SOS Too Bad, Train Kept A-Rollin', Seasons of Wither, and Pandora's Box. Holy crap. You talk about a phenomenal rock and roll record and a giant leap from the first to the second record. This is it. Little bit of trivia. If you've read their autobiography from the late 90s, everybody thought Train Kept A-Rollin' featured a studio and then a live version blended together. It was all in the studio. It was a trick. The producer here, Jack Douglas, he had actually worked on the concert for Bangladesh with George Harrison. So really they did 2 separate takes of Train Kept A-Rollin', 2 different styles in the studio, blended them together, used the audience noise from the concert for Bangladesh in Madison Square Garden and put it on here. So it's a complete studio trick. There are no live recordings on here, live in the studio, but no concert recordings. Don't be fooled, but it's still fun. Number 5, Get Your Wings by Aerosmith. Number 4, and these get a little harder to qualify or quantify each time. This one here, because the first album was really good. It established really stoner or doom rock. This came out less than a year after the first one, both in 1970. From the Midlands of England, from Birmingham, I can only be talking about Black Sabbath with Paranoid. Again, the first album recorded basically live to track over the course of a marathon session over a day or two. Great, had NIB, had the title track, had Wicked World. It was a really good album, but the leap, I keep using that word, the improvement from the first record to the second here, War Pigs, Paranoid, Planet Caravan, Iron Man, Electric Funeral, Hand of Doom, Rat Salad, Fairies Wear Boots. If you were to pick just one studio album from the Ozzy years of Black Sabbath, this is probably the one people know the most. Sabbath Bloody Sabbath is actually my favorite. We'll do that in another, we'll talk about that album in another post. But yeah, the production on this, there's an album in here somewhere. That's interesting. Produced by Roger Bain for Tony Hall Enterprises, who I believe was involved with the first one. But again, this one here, just, killer. The sound on this, the riffs. It was originally supposed to be called War Pigs, hence the title. The record company didn't like it, so they came up with the little ditty of Paranoid in the studio one day. It became a classic as well. So, number 4, Paranoid by Black Sabbath. Again, this just keeps getting tougher and tougher. Sticking with British rock, but a totally different sound. 1000%, 180 degree difference. A band who started out as art school students. We're not talking about the Stones. They added a 5th member. There were 4 of them. They added a 5th member to be a touring guitarist. So a bit like with the Beach Boys doing with Brian Wilson, they thought, the genius songwriter can stay at home. Unfortunately, it fizzled due to drug use and mental health issues. That was really a tragedy. Syd Barrett was, rock's first acid casualty, really. They put out Piper at the Gates of Dawn. Talking about Pink Floyd, I like Piper. Great album. But the change they saw from the first to the second, and I admit, thanks to my friend Caleb, I actually much prefer the early Pink Floyd, the pre-Dark Side years. And this album, I got a little glare on it because I've still got the saran wrap, but of course I have opened and listened to it lots of times. A Saucer Full of Secrets opens with Let There Be More Light. Corporal Clegg is on here. Remember Day, Saucer Full of Secrets, Seesaw. Syd Barrett is on the closing track. It's he wrote it. It was his last Pink Floyd contribution, sadly. Jug Band Blues. I skipped over one song. Track 3, side 1, is nothing short of a surreal, trippy, progressive masterpiece called Set the Controls for the Heart of the Sun. It's menacing, it's wicked, it's evil. It's everything great about Pink Floyd can be found in that particular song. So number 3 of best second albums in rock and roll. If you've never heard this, you're doing yourself a disservice. Go find it, go listen to it, buy a copy. Cannot talk highly enough about this. Make the investment. Get A Saucer Full of Secrets by Pink Floyd. Number 2 comes from my favorite LA singer-songwriter, Complete Wild Man. A lot of people thought this was his first album. His first album was actually in 1969. It was a dud. He admittedly was young and arrogant and tried to squeeze everything he could into one album. It was not cohesive. This is one of those cases where the first album just, there are signs pointing toward what it would be. I kind of like it, but from 1969 to 1976, he honed his craft. He toured with the Everly Brothers. He made friends with a lot of the Wrecking Crew, including the great Waddy Wachtel, who was on this album, and LA country rock god Jackson Browne. I have the vinyl too, but I just pulled the CD out for convenience. Warren Zevon, the self-titled album. A lot of people, again, think this was his debut. It was not. This was his second album. And this is my favorite Warren Zevon album. It used to be number 2 or 3, I think, because this CD pressing wasn't that great, but when I bought an original vinyl copy, I heard Everything You're Supposed to. Frank and Jesse James, Mama Couldn't Be Persuaded, Backs Turned Looking Down the Path, Hasten Down the Wind. I mean, my God, what a great song that is. Poor, Poor Pitiful Me, which so many people have covered. French Inhaler, Muhammad's Radio, I'll Sleep When I'm Dead, Carmelita, Join Me in LA, and really the coup de grace on this one, Desperados, Under the Eaves. I have to pull this out and talk for just a minute about everybody who's on here. It's insane. Phil Everly is on here. J.D. Souther and Jackson Browne. Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks are on here. Who the heck else? Bobby Keys on saxophone, the great Texas saxophone player who was really the sixth Rolling Stone. Glenn Frey and Don Henley. Among Glenn Frey, on his own on guitar. So just amongst all the other musicians, the studio musicians who were great. The first Warren Zevon album is everything you need to know about LA noir and great songwriting. The self-title, not the first, the self-title. I apologize. It's my own show and I messed up. And then, lastly, and this is one, when I bought the CD, it didn't leave. I had a 3-disc player. It was in slot 3. It didn't leave for years. And it's always up for number 2 or number 1 on my favorites from this band who had a lot of lineups. This was the second lineup, known as the classic lineup. I think they were all classics. But I have to be talking about Overkill by Motorhead. They had their debut album that was recorded in the time it was supposed to take them to record a single. It was greasy, gritty biker rock. There was not a lot of focus to it. There were some good songs on it. The first Motorhead album is enjoyable if you're a fan. But this one, they got Jimmy Miller to produce, who had been working with the Rolling Stones. This one came out about a year and a half after the debut. The record company had dropped them. They signed with Bronze. Every single song on here, from the bombastic opening track, and on the original 10-song LP, the really brutal Limb from Limb, Stay Clean, Won't Pay Your Price, I'll Be Your Sister, Capricorn, No Class, Damage Case, Tear You Down, Metropolis, and on the CD here there are a couple of alternate takes and rarities or outtakes. I have an original bronze pressing of it. I found that in Edinburgh, Scotland in the year 2000, which still sounds great. And my wife, who is the best wife in the world, 2 Christmases ago got me one present, and it was the 1979 Motorhead box set. I started crying. I was so overcome with emotion. Overkill has been one of those albums that has stayed with me no matter what my tastes of music. You want good, loud rock and roll. This isn't really heavy metal. It's hard rock. They would get heavier as time went on. Definitely from the Kilmister, Clark, Taylor lineup, this is without a doubt my favorite. I can't say enough good things about it. So if you're a Motorhead fan and you haven't heard this, which is kind of silly, I'm sure you have, or if you're a fan of just good hard rock in general, this is actually really melodic. It was well produced. It's unrelenting. Even the slower songs are bruisers. Again, absolute classic. My number 1 pick for best second albums in rock and roll. So to recap, We had Fly By Night by Rush, Get Your Wings by Aerosmith, Paranoid by Black Sabbath, Set the Controls for the Heart of the Sun by Pink, or Saucerful of Secrets. I talked so much about the song Set the Controls for the Heart of the Sun. And then number one, best second album, Warren Zevon, self-titled, and then Overkill by Motorhead. So thank you all for watching. I appreciate any feedback. I look forward to talking with you again soon. Hopefully it won't be so long between videos. Take care of yourselves.